Hello, I'm Grandmaster Julen Arizmendi, and today I would like to share with you this position from the game Sturo Movsesian, played in the 2018 World Senior Championship. All right, so in this point in the game, White is an exchange down, but in return, he's got the two bishops, a healthier pawn structure, and the much safer king. Right, so everything put together, he definitely has good compensation in this position, probably even more. However, we still need to come up with a move, right? And if you want to try to do that, I would recommend pausing the video now. Okay, so a few ideas that might come to mind at first is going for the brute force approach, which would be rook takes d6. However, after queen takes d6, knight takes f5, basically any queen move is winning here. Queen e6, queen f6, doesn't really matter. Black is defending very, very easily. And I don't see any other tactical way to go about this position. Therefore, we should look for some other approach. And I think a very good one in this position, it's a very easygoing one, would be the three questions approach, right? The way this method works is we want to ask ourselves, where are the weaknesses? What's our opponent's idea? And finally, what's our worst place piece? In this case, the weaknesses are d6, f5, and h6 is somewhat weak, although it's not so easy to get there, right? Mainly d6 and f5. What is our opponent planning? That's not so easy to see here, right? Black is not really threatening anything. Therefore, we'll skip that one. And finally, we need to find our worst place piece. Right? In this case, the knight on g3 is standing very, very well, putting pressure on f5. And in fact, if I pick that knight up and place it anywhere else on the board, I don't think it's gonna be better placed than on g3. The queen on f4 is doing a good job, putting pressure on f5. But it's true that the queen, we can see that it could drop back to d2 and increase the pressure on d6. So that's a possibility. The rook is putting pressure on d6. I don't see any other square for it. That seems to be a good one. And the bishop on b2, it is active. It's pointing towards the king side. But it's also true that the bishop could easily go to a3, increasing the pressure on d6, maybe bishop c1, attacking h6. And finally, we need to talk about this guy on e2. This bishop is doing absolutely nothing here, right? And one way to try to find out where the piece wants to go is we pick it up and we put it on any square on the board and see if we like it there. Okay, in this case, I believe the bishop definitely wants to be on this diagonal, right? Remember that the two weaknesses are d6 and f5. So once we realize the bishop wants to be on this diagonal, bishop d1 comes as a candidate. Bishop d1 in order to go to c2. The three candidates we have are bishop d1, bishop c2, queen d2, and bishop a3, right? This is one of those situations in which as soon as we see bishop d1 and then bishop c2, we immediately realize that that's going to be a very, very strong idea. And that's the best move, bishop d1. One sample line I analyzed is queen f6, bishop c2, bishop c8, all right? White has managed to improve his position. And now he can finish black off with a very, very nice maneuver, queen d2, attacking the pawn on d6. And now if, for instance, black goes queen g5, we have queen d1. We do not want to exchange queens even if we get a pawn back in this case. Why? Because black's king is so exposed. So we want to keep the queens on the board. The pawn on d6 is dropping anyway. So queen g7, this is a very tricky engine defense. The idea behind it is if white takes on d6, which would be a very big mistake, knight takes c4, we hit the white queen, so bishop takes g7, knight takes d2, and black is doing well. So going back here, instead of rook takes d6, white can play queen c1, defending the bishop, and at the same time prepare rook takes d6 because black no longer has knight takes c4. And now black is in deep trouble. If he goes queen to g5, we again go queen d1, the pawn on d6 goes, and if queen f6, white has a very, very nice move. Rook takes g4. And the pawn on f5 is pinned, as well as the knight on e5. So white is winning. All right. But instead of bishop d1, Sturoa played bishop f1. And the reason for this is he had actually dropped the exchange earlier in the game. And I guess he just hadn't yet realized that his position was so good. And I also believe that they were both in time trouble here. Okay, so queen f6 was played. And now the best move is queen d2. The reason for this, again, if we ask ourselves the three questions, now we know that white does not want to change the queens because black's king is exposed. Black wants to play queen g5. And that's what should have been prevented with queen d2. But instead of this, Stura played rook d2, queen g5. Queen takes, pawn takes. Queen d4 is not such a great idea because after f4, black is crashing through. Knight f3 could very well be an idea next move. So he exchanged queens and rook takes d6. And this is another position where if you want, you can pause the video and try to solve for black. Okay, so here there's a very direct move for black, which is f4. And we definitely want to make this work. Bear in mind, black was probably in time trouble, and he was scared of bishop takes e5, rook takes e5, bishop d3 check. Now, the problem is, if we go to g7, h6 is going to be very, very annoying. If we go back to h8 or g8 now, there's rook d8 check. However, instead of king g7, black could go king h8 first. And the idea is if white goes rook d8 check, now we go to g7, and h6 is no longer possible. All right. So after king h8, white can go h6, threatening mate on d8. And what black has one single good move, which is rook d8, preventing rook d8. And if knight h5, another great move, rook f8. And the idea is we have both rooks defending the first rank. Rook d8 could be one option, trying to get rid of that really, really dangerous rook. And if rook d7, threatening rook h7 check, black has bishop e4. And now we see the idea behind rook f8. If bishop takes e4, rook takes e4, and the rook on f8 is preventing any annoying checks on the first rank. Therefore, black would have had pretty much a decisive advantage after rook f8. Instead of that, going back here, I guess Movsesian didn't see that very clearly, and he decided to go bishop c8 and offer a draw, which was accepted. It later turned out to be a decisive game in the final standings because Movsesian ended up getting 8.5 points out of 11, and Stura right behind him with 8 points. Okay, I hope you liked the this game, and I hope to see you soon. Goodbye.